now passed it to me. And we've been working together, and we've been able to get a master's student graduated with some of the work that he's been doing, that we've been doing together. It wasn't under my supervision, it was under Ying He's supervision. But we've been working quite a lot together, and it's been a really good experience. It's been a really eye-opening experience, very much relevant to AgTAC, and that's why I thought it'd be great to have Peter come and join the seminar program. So just a little bit. So Peter has been working with Biogene since 2015. So that's on the ASX, so it's a pretty big deal. And it has been working in the area for over 20 years. And there's a whole list of different companies that he's been working with. And you could see New Farm as a company that you may have heard of. BASF is a company, and Bioprospect. So lots of AgTech kind of companies, and I thought it'd be wonderful to be able to engage with industry, with somebody from industry with such a wide variety of expertise. So before we get started, what I wanted to do, so that's Peter. I just wanted to also begin by acknowledging the Australian and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as first inhabitants of the country. And I wanted to pay my respects to the traditional owners and elders, past, present, of the land of which we stand today, the Bindal and Wulguru Kaba people, and all the lands on which we gathered here today, which is all over Australia, from what I could tell. So with that, I was wondering, Peter, would you be able to bring up your first slide?
Sure.
And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to Peter May, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Biogene Technology research programs, collaborations, challenges, and opportunity. So over to you, Peter. I'm going to go on mute.
Okay, thanks, George. And I should just, while we're doing introductions, I should just introduce two people who I can see are with us today. So there's James Wade, who's our a technical and regulatory manager down there. And also I noticed that Kurt Wagner, you're there also, Kurt, aren't you, sitting in your car? And it's great to have you along. I'll mention you a little in the presentation, so everyone will find out what you do when I get to that point. So yeah, look, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak today. I don't do a lot of these. I've done some, it's been a while since I've presented at a conference, etc. We should do more, shouldn't we, James? I'm sure he'll nod to that, because we need to get out and about a bit more. We did do when JCU Connect was going, we did a presentation in Cairns, I think, which was just an opportunity for JCU to talk about some of the projects that you were involved in. So it's great to be able to share some of that with you guys, so that you're aware of what we've been doing as we've been working with JCU, and just to get an idea of what other collaborations we're involved in. So that big mosquito there is intentional. We've got a strong focus on public health, so I won't talk a lot about that, but that's something that is quite evident in a lot of our projects. So I'll just go through the slide deck as I speak. I've got that standard notice and disclaimer, just in case you guys are about to go out and buy a whole lot of shares in Biogene, which you're quite welcome to do. We're just in the midst of a capital raise, so you might have missed the boat a little bit, but I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to go online and we're BGT, that's our ticker on the ASX. So we are very much interested in attracting investment. I think you would have seen this in the flyer that went out about today's presentation. My background's pretty broad. I've been in the industry for many years now, in both research and development, as well as business and sales roles. working for locally based and some overseas companies as well. So it basically covers a lot of the agricultural and non-crop, as we say, which sort of gets into the pest management and turf and ornamentals and those markets as well, consumer as well. So fairly broad experience in a lot of areas of how companies are operating in this industry. The industry being, of course, agricultural chemicals or supply of products and technology into these markets where there might be insects, there might be weeds, there might be diseases, there might be needs for biostimulants and plant growth regulators and insect growth regulators. It's quite a complex and broad area, as you would know, but not so many companies when it comes down to it. There are some large companies that dominate, and I've had involvement with some of those companies like BASF and Syngenta, etc. I've got a fairly broad educational background in agriculture, mainly focusing on crop protection and insect integrated pest management, and I'm fairly heavily involved in the local Pest Management Association and Mosquito Control Association. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. The topics today, and this is, you know, I had to go back and adjust this after I'd done the presentation, but I think it still stands fairly accurate. So I'll just give a little bit of background to Biogene and our products, talk about the target markets that we're really focused on and the sorts of ways that our products are being used. And then I'll really get into the sort of guts of it, I guess, which is what we've been doing with collaborators in the research and development area, just to give you a feel of who we work with and where we operate and the nature of some of the projects. And then really focus in on, I guess, using the JCU collaboration as a bit of a case study and also an opportunity to give you an idea of what we've been doing with you guys over the years, focused particularly on what now, of course, we're doing with George in the engineering space. And then if we have time, I've just got some slides that sort of just give you a general idea of how Biogene is facing the world and the challenges we have and some of the opportunities that are presenting themselves. And I guess highlighting some of the potential future projects that JCU might have an interest in that would go beyond what we're currently doing and maybe get into some of the other areas that we're involved in. So that's the presentation. Again, this information is in the flyer that went out. I just thought I'd just refer to the business model though, just to highlight the fact that, you know, we are a commercial company. We're looking to generate income and return on investment from for our shareholders, and so we need to have a financial business model. It's basically about developing a technology, you know, generating information to support an IP platform that will then enable us to license that technology out to other companies. We're a small organization, as I'll describe, and we are looking for commercial collaborations and partnerships to actually further develop the products into the marketplace. And so through doing that, we'll receive upfront and milestone payments for that licensing. And then if all goes well, we'll be selling product as well, because the current model is that we would be responsible for the manufacturing and production of the active ingredients, of which there are 2. So that's our business model. The board of directors and management team, there aren't too many of us. There are some additional faces I could put up, which are sort of permanent part-time, if you like, that provide us with further advice and services. But this is the guts of it. This is the board comprises really Alex Ding, he's a lawyer, he's the chairman. Tim Grogan's the CEO and MD. He has a wide range of experience in biotech and AgTAC companies, mainly in Australia. And then we've got Andrew Guthrie, Chris Ramsey, who have a broad experience in the agricultural chemical industry with companies like Syngenta and Bayer and BASF and Nufarm. The CFO, obviously, James is up there in lights. He's very important. He's now looking after both research and regulatory areas, and Richard Jager, who was a past CEO, is a commercial advisor. So a very small team, I think, is what I'm trying to communicate here. But what we do is really link into a lot of research and development, contractors, collaborations with universities, etc. And I'll talk a bit more about that. The products that we're focused on, we're talking about here, are derived from nature. And there are only two of them. One is Q-side, which is 100% natural oil that's extracted from the leaves of this chemotype of Eucalyptus cluesiana, or Gimpy messmate, as it's otherwise referred. And it's 100% extracted oil. And it contains tasmanone as the major component, greater than 80%. Tasmanone's a beta triketone that has insecticidal activity. It also has a little bit of flavosome, but not enough to really extract it naturally. So flavosome, we've discovered a way to synthesize it in the test tube, as it were, and we've scaled that up now to large quantities through a collaboration with Rallis in India. So flavicide we refer to as a nature-identical compound. It's synthesized, but it's still based on flavosome, which is a naturally occurring plant compound. So both these compounds have very similar chemistry, and they therefore have the same insecticidal mode of action. And that's really at the core of the technology. It's a mode of action that's not represented in any product that's currently on the market. We've done a lot of work to identify what the mode of action is, and that's assisted us in our patenting strategy, which are mainly use patents. Both these products have application in broad areas of use. We're focusing primarily on public health, vector control, mosquitoes, ticks, those sorts of insects, and also in crop protection, both in field and also in storage. And we've done a lot of work with the Queensland, now called DPI, in grain storage. So that's a sort of a snapshot really of what we're focused on. There are other uses in animal health, in consumer, home and garden, which we're also working with. This is a broad insecticidal mode of action that targets a range of insects and arthropods, including mites, ticks, etc. And so it has a lot of applications. And in fact, one of the biggest challenges we have, I think, is really to focus our activity on particular areas so that we don't try to do too much too quickly. So our key priorities and milestones is really around building the technology, the IP, and then supporting a database to use to build a package, a regulatory package for registration of the active ingredients. And of course, that's Q-side oil and the flavicide technical grade material. And so those two active ingredients need to be registered before we can then register end-use products that are based on those actives. And we're primarily targeted at the moment towards Australian registration. The US regulatory system is pretty much a globally accepted system. So we're also looking at the data requirements for the US, and we've made approaches to the US EPA, as well as the European. The EU is something of a gold standard as well. So depending on what our targets are, we would be seeking registrations in each of those jurisdictions. So it's quite a lengthy and involved process, but the essential data package is very similar. But what we're really trying to do is to grow revenue. And so that is done through partnering with commercial companies for licensing deals or some other supply of active arrangements whereby they would take the end-use products to market. Now, of course, that involves a lot of investment on the part of Biogene, and we source our funds because we're listed on the ASX from what we can raise on the market from our existing shareholders and new investors as we raise capital. So that's a very important part. We can't undertake the sort of work that we do without that level of support. We obviously look for third-party funding as well through organisations like Oz Industry and course, grower-funded organisations like the GRDC, etc. And of course, we have to make the product and we have to supply it at a competitive cost. So a lot of our focus in not just synthesizing or producing Q-side oil is really in fine-tuning those processes and those systems so that we can be competitive and we can be supplying product to our commercial partners so that they can be competitive in the marketplace. And then obviously we're going to have to match the market demand. So there's a lot of effort going on in just what's involved in that scale-up process, which is particularly important for Q-side because, of course, it's coming from trees, and we have to grow more trees in order to produce more Q-side. Just in broad terms, just taking it back to the R&D focus and thinking about both Q-side and flavicide. I mentioned the Q-side oil production, where we're growing trees, extracting oil. With flavicide, we're chemically synthesizing through chemical processes in a factory. We're also looking at a lot of formulation development activity, which is really about optimizing the use of the active in particular use patterns. And that's a very important area. Formulation can have a huge impact on how effective your active ingredient is once you've applied it. Obviously, we need to understand the efficacy of our products against those target pests that we're focused on. And we've done a lot of initial early scope of activity work. But as time has gone on, we've focused in on particular pest types where we've confirmed activity and where we see more realistic opportunities. As I say, the mode of action is very important, and we're continuing to do further work in that area because essentially it defines how the product works, but it also defines how our product would be used in association with other compounds in integrated pest management strategies and resistant management strategies, because as you probably know, overuse of any one product leads to the development of resistance. So we're looking to have our products listed on the IRAC, which is the International Committee for Resistance Groups. And then, of course, product chemistry. So there's a whole lot of testing that we need to do to build that database to support registration and quality control and manufacture. And so these get us into mammalian toxicity, environmental fate, ecotox, impact on non-targets, etc. So there's a lot of work that we're doing with a lot of different laboratories and organisations, both here in Australia and overseas, in order to build that package for the support of the registrations. Just to give you a feel of what collaborations we currently have running, I mentioned commercial partnerships. We're working. There's a company called Enview, which you may not have heard of. It was Bayer's environmental science business, and they spun it off into a separate business. It's a very large multinational organisation that's focused on non-crop markets, pest management, turf management, a little bit in consumer, ornamentals, forestry, industrial weed control, those sort of areas that aren't traditional agriculture. But it's a very important partner for us. So we're collaborating with them and evaluating our products and looking at market opportunities. Clark Mosquito Control in the US is the largest commercial organisation that's providing services to both homeowners as well as councils and municipalities for control of mosquito. Evergreen Garden Care, you may have seen that on shelves in Bunnings. They have a range of branded products for the home and garden market, and we're working with them in Australia, New Zealand, and in Europe. SDK is a Israeli-based company that specialises in natural products, and we have a collaboration for the registration and development of Q-side with that company. They're the commercial companies. We're working with others that we haven't announced yet, but it's a very important part of what we do. Obviously, we need that commercial support in order to build our business case and to commercialise our products. But we do work with a lot of government institutions, universities, grower groups, and I've just listed some of those there in terms of the icons. You'll see Purdue University. We work very closely with them in the area of mosquito and tick control. Similarly, in University of Florida, We have a project running at the moment funded by the CDC that's being run out of Purdue University for ticks, for Lyme disease control. But locally, we've also done work with Caesar Australia. They're based out of Melbourne. Not sure whether you've had contact with them, but they do a lot of work on resistance management and control of insects in horticulture mainly, but some in broadacre crops. I mentioned Queensland Government with the work we've done in grain storage and with flavicide in particular. And then CSIRO, we've had a long-standing involvement with them, mainly in the area of manufacturing. James Cook University listed there, obviously. Southern Cross University also have done a lot of our analytical work. And I mentioned Oz Industry earlier and GRDC. The one in the middle, the round one, is the Department of Defense in the US. We've just recently secured a couple of project grants to undertake evaluation and testing with both flavicide and Q-side for what they call their deployed warfighter program, or protection program, which is all about control of vectors and nuisance insects and pests in the field that might impact the armed forces. So that's just a snapshot, really, of the sorts of collaborations that we've been involved in and are continuing. Formulation development's another one that's expressed there in some of those collaborations. So collaborations for us are I guess the lifeblood of what we do. We don't do a lot of research for research's sake necessarily to publish. But in the early days, that was mainly because we weren't wanting to really make public a lot of the information because we were still seeking patent coverage. We've reached a point now, I think, where we have enough patents in place so that we can now start to publish a lot more, and we'll certainly be doing that because it's a good validation and promotional way of putting forward our product and our technology. The JCU collaboration. Now, I'm not sure, some of you obviously are aware of this, and George has mentioned that in his introduction. But yeah, we've been working with JCU from 2018, I think. We started really with Darren Crane, who's pictured there. Apologies to Darren, he's not on the call, I don't think, but it's not when you have to wear these funny hats in laboratory. But that's in a tissue culture laboratory at Skybury, actually, in just outside Mareeba. But the early work that we did with Darren's group was really good in terms of tissue culturing some of our superior tree material that enabled us then to continue or maintain the genetic stock of those tree lines so that we can subsequently use it in our tree improvement and production programs. We've got George sitting there in the middle there. I'll put you in center place there, George. So a lot of expectations there, but you can see the ruffians on the right. Ying He is there, and Nathan and Tristan are there, and the other chap with the hat on is Wally Del Santo, the farmer, who I'll speak about in a moment. But so the JCU collaboration's been going on for quite some time. And that just reinforces that. It's been in the area of tissue culture with Darren's group, in Q-side oil extraction with the engineering group. In the early days, we had Robert Burke. He was guiding us, and Yang Liu's also had some involvement in the analytical chemistry area. We even had a project there going for a while with Ryan Orr, just looking at Panama disease control, because Q-side has some other attributes that go beyond insect control. I thought I'd just do a few slides just to give you a snapshot of what we're talking about when we talk about Q-side production. So this is, we grow Eucalyptus cloysiana in plantation in row crops, and it's being grown on tea tree oil farms. So it's about 1 meter rows and similar sort of equipment used for cultivation and managing the crop. We harvest the trees when they're about that size, as you can see, and they coppice. So these trees here have been regrowing for the best part of probably 9-10 years now, and they regrow. Gradually, you do lose certain trees, so it thins out a bit. And after, in some of these areas now we're going back and replanting. But the coppice comes through within, certainly by 9 months or even earlier, depending on the seasonal conditions. And so you can go back in and harvest. Okay. So sorry about the noise there, but yeah, that just gives you an idea of the harvest operation. So it's producing biomass essentially that's milled in the process. It comes out in these bins. It's brought back. This is what they do with tea tree. So it's very conducive to the sort of infrastructure and machinery, etc., etc. And on the right-hand side here is the processing bin. So these bins, they come from the field. They go straight onto what we call a pot. In our case, we're using dry steam that's coming in below that pot that goes up through the biomass, comes out the top, and goes through that's the external boiler that we use to generate the steam. It comes through out of the top through a condenser and into a collection containers that then by gravity separates out. Cuside oil is actually heavier than water, which is unusual for an essential oil. We're using that to our benefit here. It just gravitationally settles out and we tap it off the bottom to produce the oil. Now, it's all very simple and it works quite nicely, but we're having to optimize it in terms of energy. There's a lot of heat involved. So we're looking at, improving that energy conversion and the amount of oil that we're getting out and the time it takes to extract the oil. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into that process, and we're still working on that to improve it. But we have come a long way from the early days when we were only getting, 1 or 2 kilos out of a bin. Now we're, getting in excess of 15 kilos out of a bin. So just in terms of that collaboration, I feature one gentleman in each of those photos. James is off to the left there, but Tristan Gibbs, who I hope you're on the call, Tristan. I'll just give him a shout out because he's been involved in the project for pretty much not completely since day one, but certainly his involvement has added a lot of ability to manage this process much more accurately and much more intensively. And in the process, he's managed to get his master's, and I understand he's going on. He's not doing his PhD in this area, but he will continue with his education. But him being available is very important for us because he's got that experience now. It's quite specific. You can't go out on the open market and find someone who's got expertise in this area. So Tristan's been involved in all of our harvests in recent times. That's in the field. He's also done some laboratory projects as well, just to look at theoretically and ideally how much oil and how we can extract it most efficiently from the biomass. So we've been utilising the JCU labs in Townsville to undertake those programs, and then we go to the field to validate those findings, and we've got it at scale. This production facility's got 3 pots. We only use 1 to do our experiments and to do our harvests because we're not quite commercial in terms of the volumes we're putting through. So thank you, Tristan and George, for your ongoing involvement. The other important component of this is really having someone who knows farming, knows equipment, knows machinery. This particular harvester is something that Wally Del Santo, who's pictured there, has put together himself using his own skills and also local service providers in Dimbula and Mareeba and Atherton and that area. So it's really important that you have the ability to like this obviously is used for tea tree harvesting as well. but it's been adapted to also suit our purposes. So it's a really very important bit of kit, really, that Wally has worked on. And of course, it's not just the harvesting and the growing. It's also then once we get into the shed and into the putting the necessary pieces of equipment together. Yeah. And now this is another one. Another person who's very important, and it's great that you're on the call, Kurt, because I can tell everyone that Kurt Wagner, who's AgTAC Automation in Cairns, has been helping us tremendously in terms of just establishing the process monitoring, data management equipment initially, so that we can really very accurately measure every aspect of our process, because it's only through that monitoring and measuring that we can understand how we might improve the process and reduce costs and time and just overall efficiency of the process. Kurt is an engineer. He has this business, AgTAC, but he also is a very good hands-on person to get things done in the shed. So if you have a breakdown, Kurt's there to sort of fix it. And if we want to be putting in new equipment, then he's always there to assist us in that. So very important to have someone who's multi-skilled in that way and also locally based. And thank you, Kurt, for your involvement in our projects. The other one I should mention, James is also on the call, so I'm glad I put this in as well. So James is basically, I've said talented and happy colleagues. Well, he's my key colleague, and he stays pretty happy, and he's certainly very talented. So he's done everything else basically. So I still remember when James arrived on his first day on the job at Cairns Airport, dressed in his tweed coat, because he was until just last week he was a pommy, but now he's a certified Australian. So it's another good addition to the country. So yeah, between James and I and the other people mentioned, and then others, of course, involved locally and also from that we bring in periodically. It's really this team effort to make the project work, and being able, obviously, to utilise JCU's expertise as well as facilities is really important for us. I'm based in Brisbane, as I said. James is based in Victoria. We don't have that local presence to be able to do things and ourselves, and so obviously we're very reliant on having a network of people involved in the project. This is an opportunity also to give just acknowledgement to the early collaboration, the very early collaboration that goes back, 20 years plus ago, which was really between the Western Sydney University, Southern Cross University, and the University of New South Wales, who got together with entomology, chemistry, analytical skills to do the collections involved in screening a lot of Australian flora for insecticidal activity or biological activity that actually led to the identification of this chemotype 2 of the Eucalyptus cluesiana that you see pictured there. And so this is very different to the cluesiana, the Gympie messmate that you'd see growing on down the coast and down around Gympie. It's very, very much restricted to certain areas, and that's required a lot of work to actually prove that up and now take it into a production system so that we can produce Q-side oil. But certainly Robert Spooner-Hart did a lot of the entomological screening that then led to the early patents around the use of Q-side as an insecticide. So thank you guys for your efforts. How are we going for time? I think we're still going okay.
Yeah. So
yeah,
we're
37 in. Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, this just gives you an idea of the sort of the current Q-side production focus that would lead us into future projects. We're really looking to scale up the plantation now. Some of our activities now around seed production, which is, we've got trees that are old enough now to be producing seed in the field, in the plantation. And we're also getting into grafting and seedling production from that seed that we're producing. It's all aimed obviously at biomass production, but the better quality that we can get, the better oil profile that we can generate, and the more consistent and cost-effective that oil is. So these tree improvement programs are really quite important. We're working with the CSIRO, the Australian Tree Seed Centre, and some other local and Queensland-based silviculturalists to assist us in that process. Because really, when it comes down, as I say, we're producing biomass. We want the plant morphology. We want to understand the agronomy. There are some disease issues around Clusiana, both in the nursery as well as in the field. We've taken steps to address that, and we really need to optimize the irrigation, nutrition, and the timing of harvest even. And then we get into the processing, and there's pre-treatments, there's process improvements that we're looking at through the steam distillation system that we're using. And it's all really around, as I mentioned earlier, to energy use efficiency and making sure that we're getting oil out as quickly as possible in the most efficient way that we can. So there's a lot of engineering, a lot of chemistry, a lot of understanding of the dynamics of that process. A bit more modelling that we need to do, which is something we've talked about really to better understand how we can modify and improve the process going forward. Because we do anticipate having significant demand where we'll be having essentially thousands of hectares of plantation being grown, and then the concomitant processing capacity to be able to handle that. Some of our challenges, and this is a little bit of a brainstorming session for me, I guess, and it really just highlights the fact that we as a small company with limited funds have to really do a lot with the little we have, and we still need to be constantly looking at funding to support the activities. So I mentioned earlier we are a listed company, but that just doesn't mean that the money comes. You've got to continually maintain those relationships with the existing shareholder and with the market more broadly, so that we can be successful in our capital raising. It's not easy for a small company. It also is not easy for an agricultural focused or a crop protection, dare I say, pesticide focused company, because it's something that the mainstream investor doesn't fully understand what we're involved in. So I think it's that's a constant challenge for us to be communicating and to be promoting our business case to the broader investor community. We've also got significant costs associated with regulatory requirements, and that's a pretty boring area, but it's really essential. And having investors understand that process, the timeline, the costs involved, that does add to the overall risk profile. But we've been successful to date, and I think it's a really good story. We've got some, we'll talk in the next slide, but there are some drivers there that really are supporting us. The scale of operations, being small, it is a challenge for us. We have an excellent team, really, as small as it is. We multi-skill a lot of project management, obviously, and we pull in expertise and other resources as we need it. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got some regular team members of that type for things like process chemistry and toxicology and that sort of thing, which is quite important to different parts and different aspects of our programs. We also have this challenge of product focus. We only have 2 active ingredients, but that in itself creates some tensions in terms of where do we put the priorities and what do we focus on. We've got the commonality of the mode of action of these compounds, but they have different applications. They have different qualities and attributes that mean that some products, or one of them, is better in one market than another or against a different pest. But we need to prioritize that, understand it, and have strategies to really focus our resources where they're best used. And that flows into the market focus, obviously. We're looking at a global reach, really. We're looking at global markets because Australia in itself just doesn't have the, is not big enough. So that's a challenge in itself in just maintaining projects around the world. Ultimately, we're a business, as I said. Financial return on investment is really important. So we've got this constant recheck of, are we spending our money wisely, and what is the financial return on each of these markets that we're looking at. And so the expertise and specialization really goes right across. In fact, I didn't put toxicology in there, I don't think. But there's chemistry and entomology, formulation technology, all of the engineering skills, agronomy. We're getting now into growing crops, so it's tree breeding, et cetera, et cetera. And then the basic marketing communication. The whole data and information management's a challenge, and of course we're utilizing technology there, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But really, it's important for us to have access to research facilities and services. We don't own any buildings or laboratories or any facilities. There are just a bit of kit here and there that we own, and that's about it. So we rely very much on contract and collaborators to provide those sorts of facilities. But on the upside, really, there's a lot of market drivers and technologies that are working for us, and that there is a strong consumer demand for natural, safe, and sustainable solutions to pest problems, as I say. So, there is even though some of these natural products have been around for a long time, there's still a strong demand for optimized natural products, and they can be improved significantly through using technology that's now available. And so, that's an opportunity for us. And our products, of course, are natural, nature identical. They're safe and they're sustainable. So that fits very well. And they're novel in the sense of this novel mode of action. And so there's a strong need for them to address pesticide resistance in currently used products. And so that's an opportunity for us as well in integrated pest management programs. So we've got large organisations talking to us because we have something novel and natural, and it's sort of fitting with their product portfolios. And that's the core to our opportunity, I think, as we go forward commercialising our products. And yeah, there's technologies. I mean, nothing stands still, as you know, in agriculture and science-related activities. There's a lot of technology available and being developed every day. And so, it's the challenge for us is to be aware and access and use that to be able to make our natural products so much better, and to better be able to assess them and test them and understand them. And that extends to the manufacturing as well. We're looking at biosynthetic pathways. We're looking at other energy sources, and we're sort of resisting the analog development a little, but there are obvious things that we can do to our chemistry that we could maintain the mode of action and extend them and improve their activity. And of course, funding opportunities. We are looking at there's a lot of interest in funding to support food security and meet and protect against these public health threats. So. We talk a lot about mosquitoes. We talk a lot about nasty things, but really, it's about protecting the public from these threats, and that's a big motivator and a good reason for people to be interested in our technology. We utilize social media, sure, and we also utilize a lot of the information sourcing and analysis power around at the moment. We've certainly been consulting with Chatty recently, haven't we, James? And there's a lot of scope there for us to really multiply or accelerate our ability to process information and to gather information, timely information that's relevant to what we're doing, not just technically, but also to make the commercial decisions that we're involved in. Obviously, agriculture, there's precision agriculture. There's a lot of technology being thrown at that, as well as vector management. And, it's all about really maximizing the effectiveness of our technology and our products in the field. And so we're certainly aware and, utilizing some of those technologies and information that is relevant. That's the end of the formal presentation. And I haven't taken up too much of my time, and that we have a bit of time for questions. I might hand it back to you, George, to manage that.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was a very nice seminar. So are there any questions?
ask a question?
Yeah, go for it,
Mahmoud?
Mahmoud.
Yeah, Peter, great presentation. That was very nice. I'm just wondering, what's the active component in these products?
Well, I mentioned very early, and I probably should have mentioned it again. Two compounds, tasmanone and flavasone, and they are both beta-triketone compounds, and they're a particular class of chemistry that has biological activity. Some of them have herbicidal activity, there's some fungicidal activity, but beta-triketones are underdeveloped really, and it was the discovery that they had insecticidal activity that led to the process that we've gone through of selecting Q-side as a natural source and flavicide through synthesis. And so yeah, they're good natural insecticides, and work very well against a wide range of insect pests.
Yeah. And can I just follow up with how do these products compare in terms of efficacy with the existing products in the market, insecticides in the market?
No, it's a very good question. And I probably should have had it down as one of the challenges, because typically, we might refer to natural products as first generation, compounds, because that's the basic compound. A lot of products we have in the market now, of course, like pyrethroids, came originally from pyrethrins, which is a natural pyrethrin, and then they were developed into a whole class of chemistry where the majority of products used to control mosquitoes and flies at the moment are synthetic pyrethroids. How do we compare? Typically, a natural product is not as active. It's you need more of it to get the same effect as, say, a fourth generation synthetic product, and that's a challenge for us. And I guess you can't have everything. If you want a safe and natural and sustainable product, then that's what you get in a natural product. Typically, it's still an active compound, but with analogs and further synthesized products, then you get into impurity profiles. You get into other characteristics of the products, in that they're so efficient. And a case in point would be the neonicotinoids like imidacloprid, and you would probably be aware of the bee toxicity issue that's come around with that class of chemistry, because they are so active that they only have to be present in the environment in very low levels in order to have adverse effects on the environment and non-targets. So it's about a balance. So we just accept that we need to use more of our product in certain situations if the potency is insufficient. But we're able to do that. We talk about the sweet spot, essentially, of that sweet spot that we can get in terms of cost and formulation delivery in order to ensure that our products are effective in the field.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I enjoyed that presentation.
Thank you.
Yvette, do you have a question?
Thanks, George, and thanks, Peter, for the presentation and for the large overview. It was really interesting to see some of the opportunities and the challenges, and was thinking through some of the ways that AgTAC researchers could mesh in with you. And indeed, you're already working with JCU quite extensively. So that was really exciting. One thing that I was interested in probing you on is these evolving carbon markets and nature markets. And, here you are planting trees to produce, an oil that can help farmers with their, control of pests and disease. Have you thought about the economics that could come by way of green finances within a farming system? So, you're doing stuff that can improve nature outcomes. I'm not sure about how it would work with the carbon outcomes, but certainly there's a lot of land where it may not be productive for crops, but it could be productive for these trees and healthy for the soil to plant trees.
Yeah. I mean, you might have noticed in some of those photos that in the field, there are irrigation nozzles that are picking up. That's an irrigated crop. So
Yeah.
in the same way that the tea tree has grown, we irrigate. Not as much, but we still irrigate because that's the best way to grow biomass quickly. Most of the eucalyptus oil that is produced, and ours is different from just the traditional oil, but it's grown, it's extracted from trees that are typically grown in a more of a dryland sort of scenario. Just coming back to the carbon question though, and of course we probably fall into, because we're a irrigated crop essentially, we fall into that discussion that's ongoing at the moment about, how can farmers actually claim carbon credits on their farming practices, and how can they demonstrate that they're actually lifting the carbon levels either present in the soil, through carbon or through roots. And what we're of course doing is we're not growing big trees apart from what we grow in our seed orchards, which is not a big area. In our biomass production, we're harvesting as I said, every 9 months, say. So we are taking that carbon off. We are building up. There's a residual carbon in the soil and in the trunk essentially, but we're removing a lot of the biomass. So I guess it's a little bit different to say forestry, where you're growing large trees and letting them grow, and obviously then the carbon builds up.
Sure.
But nevertheless, the argument's still there. It's just like it is
Yeah.
in any agricultural crop. If you can demonstrate that you're increasing the carbon content in your soil through good management, or you're interspersing your agronomy or your pastoral activities with trees or whatever, I mean, you just need to do the numbers to demonstrate.
And are many of your customers talking about ESG? And from that end, if we take the carbon part out, there's certainly some social benefits and there's other environmental benefits, just the safety factor alone of using your product. Are businesses seeing that as, something attractive about your product?
Yeah, the whole sustainability thing. And of course, these larger companies, as is happening here in Australia, larger companies now have got to have a sustainability credentials, etc. We're not quite caught by that, but we embody the same principles. So what we try to do is maintain that high level of sustainability in the way we develop our products, etc., and also the way we'll need to grow our certainly with QSide, because then we'd be looking for organic accreditation, and that then leads to another list of requirements. What probably is really of interest to a lot of our customers is the PFAS debate that's going on, which is really putting restrictions on currently used products. And I think that's where the opportunity for us is, that if we can come in with a more sustainable, greener solution, where we're working with natural products that have, breakdown pathways and minimal environmental impact, then we don't fall foul of that sort of PFAS category, which is a lot of, synthetically derived compounds that are finding their way into the environment.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, George.
No problem. Are there any other questions for Peter? Well, doesn't look like there's any more questions. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think Yvette has one more question.
Yeah, I'll go again if that's okay. Just a quickie.
course.
How we do a fair bit in terms of precision irrigation and working with Bronson and Eric Wang, who's not on the line here today, but I think Bronson is. And what methods are you using for irrigating?
Yeah.
How are you determining the water quantity, for example?
Yeah. Now, our production model really for QSide is that we would be contracting farmers to grow the biomass according to certain guidelines that we have generated. Now, at the moment, we only really have Wally Del Santo and some of his neighbours who are involved in that process. And of course, we're very interested in that aspect of it, in terms of monitoring soil moisture, timing irrigations to best suit the growth of the crop at different times or different periods. Because if if we're working to a 9-month cycle, then we're going to be harvesting at a different time of the year every year. So it's not like we can just say this is your annual cycle of how to grow this crop.
Yeah, sure.
And so, you know, we're blessed really that we're working with someone like Wally, who is quite you know, quite advanced in terms of his the sort of technologies that he's trying to use on his property. You know, interestingly, the biggest constraint to him has always been poor internet and no signal at the shed. You know, it's like very basic stuff where there's technologies that he could utilize that is not available because just the infrastructure and the services around it. It's slowly getting better, but it's clear that there's a lot of technology that he could utilize in terms of, you know, automatic irrigation and monitoring, as I mentioned, and just being better able to fine tune the agronomy and the growing of the crop to make it more cost effective and to grow us a better biomass and a more even biomass. And that's another area that we need to understand a lot better, because we need to standardize as much as possible on what we're pulling off the field in order to get in order to put it through a very tightly controlled process, which is part of our regulatory system, to produce an oil of a specification that we've registered and that we need to guarantee. So a lot of control and you know, and management is going to be required.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Thanks, George.
Thank you. Are there any questions, any additional questions or comments that you want to add? And
No.
if not, we just clocked over the 3 o'clock time, so I think it's time to finish up anyway. I just wanted to thank Peter and the whole group from Biogene really to come out, and you can see it's a real team effort that have contributed to the success of Biogene. And Peter's done a wonderful job of telling us a little bit about that story. So thank you so much, Peter. And
My pleasure, George.
yeah, we'll see you again next time you're in Cairns.
We'll see you in the paddock. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.